Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Today we've got a blockchain OG, educator and a regulator, Mr. Joshua Ellul. Joshua, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, John.
Great. So Josh, before we jump in, give us a little bit of a background on who you are and what you do and all of that.
Yep. So I'm a computer scientist by profession. I work at the University of Malta. And over the past number of years, let's say around 5 years ago, we started to set up a blockchain center, the Center for DLT, and we run a master's in blockchain and DLT. So I'm heavily involved in the education in blockchain, but I also love the tech and I love regulation of technology as well.
Okay, and it's blockchain, not crypto specifically, which interests you?
So I'm interested in crypto, the crypto sector, blockchain. I tend to say blockchain I see it as the wider area where we can use blockchain in other places as well, because I'm a strong believer of giving power back to the people.
Absolutely, that's a fair statement. And I mean, we've known each other a while, and you've, as far as I remember, you'd also worked on the regulatory side for some time, right? Can you give us a little bit of?
Yep. So I was the chairman of the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, and it is responsible for regulating the technology to a certain extent. So when someone is, let's say, doing a cryptocurrency activity, they need to make sure that their smart contracts are working correctly, and that's what this new type of regulator was in charge of.
Okay, and that's something which you worked on setting up, right?
Yes, so I was the first chairman, and I was part of setting up that authority, and now I've informed that the ministry that I didn't want to continue, so I'm no longer the chairman anymore.
I seem to remember you having a really interesting way of resigning. Can you sort of expand on that?
That's right. So the thing is with politics, sometimes if a minister changes, it could be the case that if you don't continue in a role, perhaps someone may think it's personal. And I wanted to make sure that there was an election at the time. I wanted to make sure that whoever was in power at that time, that they didn't think that there was anything political behind it. I've been meaning to step down from this role. So what I did was I notarized onto the blockchain months before the fact that I am not going to continue, and I notarized the whole statement. And then after, when I made it public, after the elections, I made the statement public, but everyone can verify that I actually had that statement notarized on the blockchain much before. So this is a cool way where you can prove that you've done something before you release it to the world. Yeah,
so proof of existence, I think, is a really interesting use case. Can you sort of dive in a little bit deeper as to sort of how an individual can independently verify this hash?
Yep. So right now what a person would need to do, at least in, let's say, the specific use case, is find that record on the blockchain from when I originally notarized it there and compare the hash with the hash of the document. Now, that sounds a bit too technical for a random person out there to get this verification done. So we do need better tools to allow for any individual to just click on this document, drag it in somewhere, or use an app and say, verify it, and it tells them verified. So we need the tooling to get there, and I think we also need some more awareness as well to get there. But that's the current state of affairs.
No, I definitely agree with you on that front. I don't see educators, regulators, or Gen Pop, I think, playing around with sort of RSA or SHA and getting to the bottom of it, right?
Exactly.
So, but on that point specifically, I think education is often a misconstrued area in this industry. What are your thoughts on that?
So, education and awareness is a very broad, it covers so many different aspects. I mean, specialization to get individuals to work in the sector, and then just general awareness, allowing for anyone in different parts of their daily lives to be able to interact with this type of technology. And I think those two different parts to education, there's still a lot of work that we need to do. So in Malta, we started with this master's in blockchain, where students coming from technology, computer science, software dev, law, regulation, business, finance, economics, they can specialize in this area after doing a first degree. But we haven't really done much in allowing for students to start in this area, right? We have some subjects in the undergrad level, but that's about it. I mean, what about awareness for young kids, for teenagers who are starting to hear about NFTs and all this tech? There's not enough being done in regards to awareness. And this isn't a local thing, this is an international thing. And I think it's just a matter of time until more material becomes available. But as well, maybe it's something that will self-evolve. Like, I'm not sure how much the internet in general and computers in general are taught to students. Like, how much do they learn from what they're taught, and how much do they learn from just trying stuff out? So maybe it's going to be a mix of both that will take us to that reality.
Like, I think the sort of newer generation have adapted to the internet quite well, because let's face it, I mean, Web 2 is peak level of maturity. And in my opinion, at least, it will only evolve to self-cannibalize from here on out.
That's right.
But before we reach this point, like way back when, we had search, right? We had search through Yahoo and Google, and what we don't have now is like that equivalent search for the blockchain world, like something which is irrefutably adds value across the board in a way that everyone can easily use.
That's right.
So if you had to sort of take a little stab in the dark at what that might be, what does the crystal ball tell you?
Okay, so first of all, I have to reiterate what you said. Definitely, the technology is not there yet. The tools aren't there. You need to very often install plugins into your browser. No, I mean, we really need our software. We need this stuff, these pages, these dApps, to be grandma and grandpa friendly, right? I don't want my dad calling me every time he needs to input his 14-word password key phrase.
But he'll call you every time the Wi-Fi on his TV breaks out anyway, right?
Anyway.
So fair. There's something we can't avoid, but fair. Continue.
But we need this simple tool that provides a service to the masses. And this simple tool could be used for verifying documents, our own documents belonging to others. So let's say we go to banks. How does the bank know that that document is a true document? How does the bank verify whether a guarantee or an invoice you got from someone is actually true? All of this verification process can easily be fixed using simple interfaces, just dragging in documents and saying verified or not verified. The small caveat is that you have to now trust this interface, this dApp. But I think with enough scrutiny, we can build assurances that these types of dApps work. And this might be where this Digital Innovation Authority, these types of regulators, although it's the only one so far, could come in. They could provide a certification on that dApp saying it's really doing what it should be doing. And then it's ironic, right? Because then we're trusting an authority to tell us that the software is doing what it should be doing, when blockchain was all about just trust the software.
It was. It's just. I think when you sort of leave things down to purely trusting the software, the reality is that there's a handful of people that can actually understand it, right? So we need these sort of walled gardens in which we can operate inside an environment of trust, right? And that's something which I think regulators can really facilitate with. Although. There's a massive gap in the education space, right? Yeah. And that's true both for individuals as well as regulators. What sort of approach do you think regulators can take to ensure that we don't end up 25 years behind China, but still head down the right direction in technology-wise?
Yeah, so there is a global problem on finding human resources, especially with tech know-how, especially in these fast-paced environments. That exists for sure. So regulators need to somehow not just look for these resources, but also think about upskilling and potentially reskilling some of their internal resources. So I think it would be opportune, and actually they should, make sure that the staff who are somehow touching this space are aware of what does the technology mean, what implications does the technology have, and how should they use that technology to facilitate their operations, but also how does it implicate the processes they are overseeing. So that's one part to it, making sure that they have the resources to keep up to date. But another point as well is we don't want to over-regulate a space, because it's not just about education, it's also about the frameworks we put in. If we over-regulate, especially with decentralized tech, there's often not much you can do to stop let's say, a fully decentralized network. You can say that you'll stop it, but it'll work whether you like it or not. So if we over-regulate, the only thing we'll do is drive innovation in the space elsewhere. So we need to make sure to not over-regulate, but at the same time, and so a bit more history. I come from a typical programmer, computer, let's say, geek perspective of don't tell me what to do, my code will do whatever I need it to do.
Silly human.
But then obviously once I got involved in regulation, I became more aware of the problems of why we need regulation. We can't have scammers in the space just making off with millions. We can't have software that's breaking, losing millions. So we need to protect individuals, we need to protect society. So we can't over-regulate, we can't under-regulate either. And a great approach to get around this problem, especially with fast-paced environments, is a sandbox approach, where the regulator, along with the community, along with the operators, come up with a framework that allows for everyone to operate without stifling them, and they start learning as they go. So we had recently launched, the MDIA had launched a sandbox a number of months ago, just before I left, and EU is now looking into sandboxes as well to help keep up with this fast-paced environment. And I really hope that the regulators do continue with such a flexible approach.
I mean, sandbox, I think, is a fantastic approach, because it's a sort of like light touch approach, which can I think work for all parties. Although I mean, regulators have a sort of habit and a track record of overstretching, right? Like with the recent sort of attempt at the power ban. Like, how do we make sure that these people, when I say these people, I mean like the sort of regulators that be, right? Because I'm sure to an extent they mean well.
That's right.
To an extent, although sometimes they just come up with some ridiculous ideas, right? Like, and the fact that you're trying, like you said, right, trying to ban something which is by its nature decentralized is literally impossible. Bitcoin is probably the only example of that, and that's exactly the reason why China tried a million times, and a million times they've gone back on their word, and we're back here again today.
That's right.
So, are there any lessons that maybe the EU can learn from this failure, as well as from China's successes and or failures?
Yeah. So, a regulator at the end of the day is quite a complex structure of individuals who have a goal, and the goal is a desirable goal to protect society. But you also have individuals in there who care about their success in the entity and also don't want to look bad. So let's say you have someone who's coming to the end of their term, they won't want to make large change. And when you have new types of technology that can bring large change, there will be resistance. So it's very important that especially the decision makers in these entities are versed, not necessarily well versed, but they're versed, or they become literate in the area by getting general introduction to the tech and general introduction to what it means. I would start with that, but obviously a regulator can easily over-regulate because it puts them into a position where they're sure they're doing their job. There's little risk. That comes natural with the territory. At the same time, they are supposed to create an environment that is conducive to the sector, but I think it also requires that the community and the operators make sure that they push back when required to keep the regulator in check. So you have these two opposing forces, and they'll hopefully meet and find a balance. And it's not really opposing, it's about working together. And I think even the mentality that regulators go in, they're often not going in with the mentality of, let's destroy this. They're just thinking about protecting society. But sometimes operators are thinking that the regulator is the enemy. They shouldn't go in with that mentality. Think that this is a collaborative approach. Obviously, the regulator needs to collaborate as well. However, when it comes to the POW ban, the proof of work ban, this is something that I'm quite passionate about, because proof of work is one of the only algorithms which supports Bitcoin that really ensures you can have a heavily decentralized system And issuing a ban as coming from a central bank, a ban from a central bank due to reasons of environment doesn't ring well with me. I mean, if it was coming from an environmental actor, I would accept it. But I think that argument from a central bank is a bit worrying, and it makes me think, why are they trying to impose this? And that's even beside the fact that we're not even looking at the facts and figures that are being proposed. So the whole argument is Bitcoin is destroying the world, proof of work is destroying the world, it costs too much energy, and we need to stop it. I think we need to sit down and see how much is it actually consuming in terms of energy. Now, Bitcoin is often posed to be a replacement for the banking system. Whether we like that or not, let's leave that argument aside. If it one day could be a replacement for the banking system, we should see how much energy does the banking system consume. Is it greater than Bitcoin? If it is, should we ban the banking system? Of course not. There are other technologies out there that consume a lot of energy. AI consumes a lot of energy for training its models. Monsters, Inc., a great film, took 2 years to render, and that took a lot of energy. However, it's energy well spent. Mm-hmm. It is the utility that the technology brings. We have to measure whether that energy is worth it. And I think as a people, we should never give up the power to have a decentralized network. We need to always have the power to say, government, powers that be, you messed up. We're going to oppose you with this decentralized tech. I think we should always keep them in check. That being said, if we find that Bitcoin is destroying the world and the utility it brings is not worth it, then I think we have to sit down and say, yeah, okay, maybe if we're destroying the world, that's obviously not acceptable, no matter how much I would love a decentralized world.
Great take. I would love to think that such reports would be conducted in a fair and unbiased way. Although I think one of the sort of greatest issues with something like that is that the cost of corruption is really unquantifiable, right? Yeah. And that is one of the main long-term benefits that Bitcoin will bring eventually, assuming sort of everything in the white paper comes to pass, right? Yeah. And its intention is carried out. So it's like, would you ever sanction a report on yourself which might stick you in a bad light?
Well, if regulators who are not there to serve their own interests, but they're there to serve the interests of society, are doing their job, then yes, they should. And on that point, there was a report by a company in the crypto space. And I read through it knowing that it's from a company in the crypto space or someone from a company in the crypto space. So there is bias, right? But the facts and figures are there. And you often see people saying, oh, that's a biased report. True, it's written by that person. But can we not just get someone on the other side to look at the facts and figures and come up with opposing facts and figures and find the truth? I mean, these things are not subjective. At the end of the day, it's objective. So I would like to see those opposing this report and in general reports that come out from the sector to present the facts and figures and let's see where they lie. And yeah.
I'd be extremely happy if any of the regulators out there had half as much integrity as you did, and I think if that would be the case, we're onto something good. Until then, thank you for being in the show with us, and thanks for making the time. Cheers, Josh.
Thanks, John.